Tennessee to help sum up what we've seen out of this session so far with our super panel, John North, Susan Richardson-Williams, and Don Bosch. Good to have all of you here. John, I want to talk about guns and specifically Governor Bill Lee and his plea to fellow Republicans to pass some legislation tied to guns, and what he saw is not a red flag, even though some say it was a red flag, to be able to remove guns from homes of people who might be a danger to themselves or to others. And I'm setting this up because this week he came out publicly with a message to say, please do this.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, we are in the waning hours of the session when he comes forward on Tuesday or Wednesday and says, please do this. So let's keep that in mind. And everybody probably wants to go home. And then he says, and he was kind of pushing it further from a couple weeks ago when he said, you all really should do this. And there was crickets. But yeah, he is, it appeared to be a good faith effort. How bold or strong it was, how much stomach was in there, that's debatable. But it would basically say we must set up a process where there's a questionable situation with somebody who may be a danger to themselves or others and has access to weapons. We need to be able to intervene. And he appeared to offer legislation that gave more due process. There's been some criticism about other laws that say, you know, there's too much ex parte, you're not allowing the party involved to have a say in this. He's like, well, ours is not going to be like that. But again, at least on Twitter and in some comments, you saw key Republicans saying, not going to happen, not going to happen.
Well,
Jason
Zachary was one of the ones that said it wouldn't happen in the House. This is really interesting that he did bring it up at sort of the waning hours of the session. And so that gave the majority a reason to say, hey, we're going home. Why didn't you propose this 10 days ago, or so? We've finished the business. They passed the budget. They're on the last few bills, and they're ready to go home. And quite frankly, they need to go home. Now, the governor could call a special session, and that's what some of the Republicans have suggested, that maybe he call, a special session. If I were the governor, I'd call it for Monday morning and say, you're back here Monday and we're going to talk about this.
Don, help us understand legally. I heard from a family attorney this week who said we have domestic orders of protection that I deal with all the time. How would something like this be different, what the governor is proposing, or would it?
Well, from what I've seen in terms of the governor's proposal, it is slightly different than an order of protection. An order of protection is done ex parte, totally ex parte. Individual can walk in, go to the court, raise their right hand saying I'm being abused by my husband, my partner, my live-in, whatever it may be, and it issues right away. And then within 10 days, there's a hearing. This looks like there's more immediate notice to the gun owner potential. The police also can instigate it on their own. But I will say a couple things in response to Susan. One, I don't think the governor will call a special session because he'll count the votes, and I don't think he'll get the votes in the House. And I don't think he's going to call a special session and have it fail. Two, Governor Lee, unfortunately, has allowed himself to be bullied by this supermajority since the day he's become governor, and he really hasn't got much stronger. Three, this is really, I appreciate the fact he's trying to do something, but it really is a tiny, tiny nibble at a problem. Nobody's going to come out and take guns. You can go back, Kennedy, Johnson, Carter, Clinton, Obama, Biden. Not a single federal president and not a single governor that I'm aware of has ever taken a gun away from a citizen that owned one, unless they were a convicted felon, unless they fell into one of the categories. But we can do so many things to help this problem. And if we save a child by just doing some sensible things that this governor could propose, could propose better background checks, could propose extended magazines, ban on extended magazines and bump stocks, things like that that could make a difference, that could save lives. We're not going to save all of them, but he could do that.
Guns are now the #1 cause of death in children.
Yeah. It's hard to fathom that.
It is. It's
depending on who you look at, 67 to 85% of American citizens, both parties, want more gun control. We're not talking about taking away guns. We're talking about reasonable regulation and restrictions. You need a license to drive a car, Okay, but you know, why shouldn't you have a little more check to be able to possess a weapon of war?
John, we did see roughly 70 bills proposed tied to guns or ammunition this session. Only a handful did pass. Important to make that known.
Yeah, only a handful. I would throw one out. We've been talking about what would make sense in terms of common sense gun legislation. In following the great distress and upset about what happened at the Covenant School in Nashville, a bill gets passed that gives gun merchants a bit of a civil break. And I think people went, really? Really? You're doing this right now?
One note on that as well, just to maximize the division we've seen, the Democrats called the governor's plan watered down, and then the head of the Tennessee Firearms called Governor Lee a tyrant for even proposing what he proposed. Let's leave that there. Let's talk about vouchers, because we saw some surprises late this week. John, in a House bill that passed, Knox County was included in this voucher plan, which means that parents would be able to take roughly $8,000 of their child and have that follow them to a private school. Knox County originally was left out of this.
Yeah, we all know that this came up some years ago. There was a big controversy pre-COVID about it, I think. Governor Lee wanted to do this. He sold it as this is kind of a pilot program for Nashville and Memphis, I think. I suppose it's inevitable that Knox County was quietly going to get slipped in there. That's what happened. But as you say, it has advanced in the House, but it is not advancing in the Senate. And our Vinay Simlot has done some reporting and indicates that so far in regards to the Senate, we have two senators from here, Briggs and Massey, that are like, we don't like that.
And Susan, originally this was, the design was Shelby County and Davidson, or sort of the trial counties for this, and there could be as many as 5,000 students involved in this. They have so far gotten nowhere near that number.
Yeah, they haven't met that number. You know, the governor this was one of his priorities when he ran, and he wanted school choice everywhere. And then it eventually got down to just Davidson and Shelby because they had the most schools that were failing. Here and Hamilton did not have. We had 3, I think, at the time, and so there was no real push to make that happen. And if you'll remember, with the Glenn Cassida, and there was a Jason Zachary vote.
A little horse trading.
A little horse trading, they said, and he voted. He said he would vote for it as long as Knox was not included. Well, this vote, I noticed that he did vote to put Knox County in the school choice. Now, I don't think it will pass in the Senate, so it's probably moot for this session, but it'll come back because it has been a priority of the governors and of folks in the House.
Don, we've got to run, but quickly, do you think we will see the vouchers across the state soon?
No, because not only are the Democrats against it, what few there are, but a lot of rural Republicans in their districts are not for it either, because they're strictly almost all public school, and they're afraid of dollars coming out of their public systems. And that's the real problem, is we're going to have to replace these dollars, and it's not going to help public education in the slightest.
I think there was 35 votes against it,
right,
which showed you there were some Republicans,
right,
and
I
they
don't
were
think we're
rural.
going to see it statewide, certainly during Governor Lee's term, and maybe never.
We got to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more perspective on the session.